Guys, I made it. I made it. I made it through the icy tundra, through the blizzard, through everything that I just had to fight through, guys. We made it. We made it. Oh, man. It's absolutely freezing where I'm at, guys. I don't know if you've ever heard of Virginia Beach or not, but it's absolutely freezing. I'm pretty sure that I got frostbite or something along those lines on my fingertips. My fingertips were numb. It was absolutely brutal, guys. It's like 45 degrees here, so it is freezing. But I made it. I walked my dog around the neighborhood. You know, it's about a 15-minute walk or so. I made it. I made it back to make sure that I'm able to give you guys this DFS episode for tonight. Yes. So I think I might have lost like a few brain cells when it came to them actually freezing in my head from it being so freaking cold. But yeah, I think that it can still, I think I can still manage this episode. I think I can. I don't know. I'm still really cold. I'm still shivering in my boots. My teeth are still chattering. It's bad, guys. It is bad. 45 degrees is not fun. It is absolutely freezing. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and kick off this episode, folks. So get ready for it. Shared all my links. I think I'm all good to go. I think I'm all set up. I think I'm ready to rock and roll. All right, guys. So here's the deal. We have a absolutely brutal matchup tonight with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Giants. And obviously it's brutal for one team. You know, it's going to be terrible. Can't expect any fantasy output from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, right? Right? You can't expect anything from the Buccaneers. No, I'm just kidding. It's obviously brutal for the Giants. I mean, just sitting here and looking at the numbers that are just right in front of my face. We're sitting there looking at Tampa Bay, who's first in yards allowed. They're second in yards per play allowed. They've the second best touchdown to interception ratio allowed. You can't run on them. You can't pass on them. They're forcing turnovers. They have the seventh most forced turnovers so far in the year as a whole, and that includes with 9 interceptions. So it's going to be brutal. I mean, they're getting the second most pressures on the quarterback with the third most amount of sacks. So Daniel Jones is going to be in for it tonight, guys. I'm sorry for you Giants fans. He's going to be in for it. Now, honestly, like, offensive line doesn't have an issue with COVID, but yeah, it's something as to where I'm still going to be nervous from Daniel Jones. They're only going to have one offensive lineman out. So we'll see actually who gets the start. I'm expecting Shane Lemieux to get in there and play guard. But yeah, it's not going to be pretty. Now, Ndamukong Suh is questionable from the last time that I saw. Either way, not going to be pretty. Now, with it being a blowout, right, there's still a chance to find some value here, but it's going to be very thin. It's going to be very, kind of spotty as to where we go on the Giants side, because you can't play a full lineup with just Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You have to actually mix it up. And so looking at it, we have to figure out which guy we want to play. You know, the Giants outside of the Cowboys have actually faced a very difficult schedule so far this year. So the Giants are kind of used to it. It hasn't been pretty. But either way, this is probably their toughest matchup, you know, as to date or up to date, outside of maybe the Steelers when it comes to that defense. Either way, not going to be pretty. So looking at Daniel Jones, he actually has the 9th best completion percentage with a clean pocket. I don't expect there to be one this week, you know, with the O-line pretty much being healthy still outside of Hernandez. It's still not going to be good news. We pretty much already went over that. So which wide receivers or which running backs, which tight ends could we be looking at? Sterling Shepard and Slayton have both been pretty disappointing overall so far on this year. And Tampa Bay has been pretty much unforgiving when it comes to blown coverages and whatnot. Like, they don't ever blow coverages. They've only allowed 19 plays of 20 yards or more, which is the 7th best rate in the NFL. Meanwhile, they've been winning in the majority of the situations. So, you know, teams are having to pass on them, yet they're still not giving up big plays. So I don't expect, you know, very many, if any at all, when it comes to Slayton or Sterling Shepard over there on the outside. Jamel Dean over there and Carlton Davis, they haven't been giving up anything at all. So it's going to be really, really tough to sit there and feel good about playing Sterling Shepard and Slayton. I think I'm going to shut them both down for the most part, outside of maybe a couple lineups here and there. You know, there is going to be garbage time. And yeah, so I think I can play, you know, each one of those guys maybe in one lineup each, maybe two, we'll say. But it's something as to where I don't feel good about this matchup. Jamel Dean's been excellent on the season, and Carlton Davis has a way bigger advantage over there when it comes to the matchups. I believe it's going to be Carlton Davis on Sterling Shepard. But either way, neither one of these guys are guys that I want to focus on. So it leads me to the other wide receiver here, Golden Tate. And honestly, I thought this was going to be like the smash play. I thought I was going to sit there and be like, yo, you got to play Golden Tate this week, man. Sean Murphy-Button. Bunting hasn't been playing very well. He started out great, by the way. Sean Murphy-Bunting was excellent over the first 3 games of the season. Over the past 4, he's completely fallen off. So Tate was sitting there. I'm like, dude, Golden Tate, that's who I'm going with. That's who I'm locking in. But then I sat there and I went through his, snap share. And it's something that I noticed last week, but it's something that, really kind of, I guess, flashed, this past week after the game. So the snaps have been decreasing to almost every single week, to the point where last week he saw a season low in snaps. Now, he did get a tutty on a great connection. It was a great pass, great reception, great running after the catch. But yeah, it's something as to where Tate, I don't know if he's going to get the workload, to be honest. According to Sharp Sports, the Giants had 2 tight end sets on the field for 57% of their plays last week. They're watching Daniel Jones get hit time and time again, and they're trying to protect him. On the season, if you include last week, they only ran 2 tight end sets on 38% of their plays so far. 57% last week, trying to keep Daniel Jones up on his feet. Obviously, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers providing the pressure that they do, I think we could see a recap of that where they bring in Caden Smith, who had his biggest snap count this past week, by the way, to come in and block. He only ran routes on 30% of the snaps so far this season. And Toy Lolo is actually doing the very, very same thing. They're not running routes. They're just staying in as extra blockers for the most part. Now, that's going to be cutting into the slot receiver snaps. So this could be another week where, we don't see a ton of work out of Golden Tate. Now, once he gets work, and when he has work, he could have very high efficiency levels, by the way. This is something that's where, Golden Tate could end up having, 4 receptions for 2 touchdowns and 40 yards. If he's able to burn Sean Murphy-Bunting like he has been over the past, like other receivers have been, it's something as to where I really do like Golden Tate. I just don't know about the efficiency. So I kind of want to take a look at Evan Ingram. And don't get me wrong, I wasn't sitting there and saying you got to play Evan Ingram this week. I'm not an Evan Ingram fan. He's been dropping balls left and right. He's somebody that I absolutely do not love. But Evan Ingram last year in their matchup went off for 113 yards and a touchdown. Now, I believe it was Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton that also had really good games, but this is a completely different defense than what we're looking at from last year. So I don't want to use last year as especially I think it was week 2. I don't want to use last year as a comparison. I want to sit there and actually focus on this year and the defense this year. So I'm gonna hop off last year, but either way, he did still do that. And like I said, you got to play at least one Giants player. I know that I'll have one share of Shepard, one share of Slayton, one share of Gallman, especially if Ndamukong Suh is out for this week. Maybe even a Daniel Jones one. Maybe Dion Lewis, which isn't likely, but yeah. Caden Smith for red zone targets possible too. I don't want to play a bunch of these guys, so I think I'm going to focus down on Tate, Ingram, and the kicker, right, when it comes to Graham Gano. But going down and actually breaking down these 3 guys, Tate has the best matchup on paper, and that's actually well known across all boards. And he's only $3K, which is cheaper than the kickers, to be honest. So it's something as to where I could actually see Golden Tate being chalked this week. The way that these lineups are kind of top heavy, very similar to, I believe it was Thursday night. These lineups could be very, very top heavy, which makes Golden Tate a very feasible play. So we already brought up the fact that he had a decreased snap share, right, in order to keep Daniel Jones on his feet. I just think that it's something as to where Golden Tate might actually be a bust and could eliminate, 40% of the lineups on the slate. It's very possible that he has that high of an ownership. Now, when it comes to kicker, right, with Graham Gano, he's only 3,600. He only has 2 games, though, with double-digit fantasy points. He has 1 up against Dallas, who we already know about the Dallas D and how bad it is. And then 1 over there up against, where was it? San Francisco, where the team dominated the entire game. San Francisco was completely beat up. So, Gano could actually be extremely chalky too. It's something where I feel like Gano and the Giants actually have to be in control of the game in order for Gano to have some, positive fantasy outputs. I don't love Gano either, but that leaves me with Evan Ingram, right? And this is where teams actually attack the Bucs so far this season, especially in the red zone. They've allowed 3 touchdowns over the past 4 weeks, and there isn't one guy that directly covers the tight end. I was sitting there and I was looking at it, and Devin White is all over every single, page and every single source when it comes to who covers the tight end. But when we break it down and we look at it, There were 7 different guys. I was going through the games and I was like, okay, Devin White doesn't have more than 2 coverages up against the tight end, and this one, and this one, and this one. There were 7 different guys that covered Noah Fant in the Denver game, right? And the game before that, I believe it was 6 different guys, or it might have been week 1. There were 6 different guys that had coverage on the tight end. So we're actually seeing a big mix of different players that are covering the tight end, and Sean Murphy-Bunting is one of them. So like we talked about, Sean Murphy-Bunting is kind of falling off a cliff off the past 4 weeks. So if Ingram sees some coverages up against him, especially in the red zone, I mean, don't forget, we had Sean Murphy-Bunting in coverage on Donald Parham. I believe he was in coverage on him against Logan Thomas as well. But yeah, it's something where if Ingram can get a touchdown or 2, this could actually be the secret sauce to all the lineups when it comes to winning that millions, because he is expensive, because he scares people away, or he makes it unable to play a top-end guy who you want to play for Tampa Bay. You can't play him because you're playing Evan Ingram, who's expensive. I think it's a complete contrarian play. I'm not seeing higher than maybe 20% ownership on Evan Ingram, and I kind of like it. Now, the thing that scares me is somebody switched out Stickum, with some grease, because he hasn't been able to catch a ball. We sat there and we saw, what is it, the longest yard? Yeah, the longest yard, where he sneaks in and he kind of substitutes things out for the guards' uniforms. It's kind of like the same thing that I feel like is happening, because Evan Ingram is not catching shit. He is literally the Evan Ingram, or the Ebron 2.0. So it does scare me a little bit, because they could end up, kind of reducing his snaps and maybe go to 11 personnel and allow Golden Tate to get more in the game. We could see that drop, because he is leading the tight ends in drops, and he had 2 more last week. But it's something as to where, I feel like Evan Ingram could absolutely dominate and get in the end zone this game, and I feel like it's almost a lock. So we have to see what happens with the snap share, but I'm going to put most of my chips in on Evan Ingram. It's something as to where the Giants are going to be a very low-scoring team this week. We're seeing probably 7 to 17 points, somewhere in that range. So I'm going to stay away from playing multiple Giants. But if you want to play like a Jones and Ingram stack, it makes me kind of sick, but I can understand you playing it. Same thing with Daniel Jones and Golden Tate. I don't hate that concept. But yeah, when I'm sitting there and I'm looking at it, I'm probably going to have right around a 60% snap share. I'll go probably, 60% snap share of Evan Ingram. I'm sorry, ownership share of Evan Ingram. Meanwhile, with Golden Tate, I'll probably have right around a 20% share of him in DFS. So on to the Buccaneers side. God, where do I begin? Which guys are going to be going off for the Buccaneers? This is going to be insane, guys. I'm telling y'all, this is going to be absolutely insane. Make sure y'all go check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/fantasyintervention. Once again, that's patreon.com/fantasyintervention. You actually get 3 of my lineups that I will personally play in the DFS. And you guys can take that same lineup and play it, by the way. Or you could switch up 1 player, 2 players. I know that I had somebody win, was it last Monday night or Thursday night? I had somebody win 900 off one of my lineups. And I actually won a big gap as well, because instead of playing, who was it? They ended up playing Montgomery over whoever else it was I suggested. So patreon.com, guys, it's literally $2 a month, 50 cents a week. It's nothing. You end up making your money back after 1 week if you just get my lineup recommendations. Patreon.com/fantasyintervention. You can also find all of our other content at linktr.ee/fantasyintervention. What's up, Gooter? All right, let's go ahead and hop over this other side real quick. I want to talk about the Buccaneers, because who does not want to talk about the Buccaneers? First off, I'm going to discount the Giants numbers when it says 23rd overall up against the wide receivers. Their passing defense is actually a lot worse than what it seems. 4 of their matchups so far this season have come up against the Bears, the beat-up 49ers team, the Eagles, and Washington. That is ridiculous. That is literally a cakewalk. So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking that, a team that faced a schedule like this should actually probably be ranked in the bottom 3 when it comes to defenses up against the wide receiver. So I'm expecting them to get destroyed, but my concern over here is the volume. It's actually the volume when it comes to the wide receivers, because if they end up going up early, right, and the Giants aren't putting up big-time points, they're going to rest Michael Thomas. They're going to rest Mike Evans. Or they're going to rest Gronkowski. Are they going to rest some of these guys that have had kind of lingering injuries in the 3rd and 4th quarter, meanwhile capping your upside? So it does concern me a little bit, but I do like Mike Evans this week as one of my primary guys. Reason being, I think that the ownership is going to be off of him significantly. I think that, seeing 4 targets in the last 2 weeks, We've seen the emergence of Gronkowski in the red zone. We've seen Tyler Johnson snaps go up along with targets go up and touchdowns. So it's something as to where Mike Evans, he's not going to be chalk. He really isn't. Godwin, right? He's going to be out with a broken finger. And Gronk is dealing with a shoulder injury, which, we kind of touched on already. So it's possible that Gronk's snaps are managed. Meanwhile, Godwin isn't in to take away targets. Now, the biggest thing and the biggest reason as to why ownership is going to be off of Mike Evans is because of how badass Bradbury has been so far this season. But guys, Bradbury doesn't travel to the slot. Evans, meanwhile, has been used in the slot. According to PFF, Evans is 38% in the slot. Meanwhile, Bradbury is 8% in the slot. So the only thing that concerns me a little bit is the fact that Bradbury hasn't faced a slot wide receiver, really. Who's the best player on that team? Like, you could argue McLaurin, but McLaurin actually in that game played the majority of his snaps on the outside, and he still ended up going off. So it's something as to where Bradbury, I don't know if he's going to shadow Mike Evans to the slot. I don't think that it happens. Like, I'm playing Mike Evans in probably 50% of my lineups this week and a few different captain spots. I mean, we could see him as an actual contrarian play just because of how the prices are working out. I tried to build like 3 lineups already, and it was something as to where like I had to really put different puzzle pieces together and really build a scenario based lineup, which I do anyways, but really meticulously, build this scenario based lineup. So yeah, it's something as to where, guys, like I talked about it with Fulgham last week and how all these experts had Fulgham being shadowed by Bradbury, and that didn't happen. Fulgham moved to the slot, and when that happened, Bradbury went to Jackson up until Jackson got hurt, and then Bradbury just stayed on his side of the field. I'm telling you guys, when players move to the slot, Bradbury doesn't cover them. Juju Smith-Schuster faced 0 coverage from Bradbury in week 1. He's an outside guy. So what if you sit there and you put Scotty Miller or Bradbury and Scotty Miller and then bracket the coverage? I'm going to revisit that. But I do want to go over one thing when it comes to the prices, because one of the popular plays on the week is probably going to be the Tampa Bay defense at 7,400, guys. That's ridiculous. Tampa Bay defense at 7,400? Dude, that's not something I will ever look into doing, because you're going to need so much production. Right? You're going to need so much upside from this position as to where I just don't think that you can actually return value. Let me pull up my numbers real quick. All right. So if you end up having, the Tampa Bay defense, right? If they score a touchdown, or if the Giants score a touchdown, right, and they allow 7 points, that means that they're going to only give up 4 points for that team. So if you get a touchdown and an interception, that's still only 12 points. The way the pricing works out is you want to at least double your pricing for it to pay off. So if you don't get a touchdown, right, at 7,400, obviously that means that you want to get 1,500 or 15 points. I'm sorry. You want to get to at least 15 fantasy points, but you really want that upside. So if you don't get a touchdown, right, you're going to need to hold the defense to less than 13 points, which I could see happening. That's going to be 4 points. Then you're going to have 3 interceptions. That's an additional 6 points. And then 5 sacks in order to get your return on investment. That's something as to where, yeah, it's possible, and they could get a pick 6 this game. That's very, very possible. But I don't want to lock in Tampa Bay defense in every single one of my lineups. It's going to be something where I play them in 10 to 20%. I'd much rather play these offensive studs and go with some of these strong offensive stacks than have to play this Tampa Bay defense and then roll out a dart throw like Caden Smith, in order for my lineups to work and still be able to play these studs. I'd rather sit there and get that meat and potatoes in my lineups than playing a $7,400 defense. That's a lot that has to go right for that defense, which is still very possible, but it's a lot that has to go right. So I'm not going to front load my teams with a ton of these defensive, stacks or defensive plays. Now, something I don't get with Pro Football Focus is the wide receiver and how Logan Ryan grades out positively. Every single receiver that has crushed the Giants this year outside of Darnell Mooney has done it out of the slot. Let me pull up my guys. So we had Juju Smith-Schuster, who went off up against him, put up 24 fantasy points or something. Brandon Ayuk had a very strong week over there up against him. Then we had CeeDee Lamb in the slot, who destroyed him for 124 yards, right? Washington football team ended up having a touchdown with Cam Sims out of the slot. And then, of course, you have the Eagles with Greg Ward and Travis Fulgham both having excellent games, which, by the way, both those guys are slot receivers. So I don't understand how they're sitting there and they're saying that Logan Ryan is actually a good slot corner. I don't know if they're just playing straight zone, like to an extent, but it's something as to where it's kind of like mind-blowing that these slot receivers are going off against them, and Logan Ryan is still producing at a very, very high-end level. So guess what, guys? Guess what? I'm attacking that slot position. I like Scotty Miller, but that's not a slot guy. We talked about it. What if Bradford gets put on Scotty Miller, right? And they bracket coverage Evans or Gronkowski, whichever one is coming over the top. What if they force Tyler Johnson to beat them underneath? What if that happens? Tyler Johnson, the rookie, and I'm not even a huge Tyler Johnson fan. I always thought he was going to be a very good pro. I just don't know about him actually hitting elite status. But yeah, what if they force Tyler Johnson to beat him underneath? I like Tyler Johnson a lot at 4,800. I mean, he's becoming that sneaky red zone guy too underneath that we saw from Chris Godwin, and he has either 60 yards or a touchdown in the last 3 games. I've seen what they can do with Godwin, and I think that they're sitting there and they're wanting to kind of implement the same type of role for Tyler Johnson while Godwin's out. So yeah, I think it's something that I'm rolling with. And I'm even a little shocked, by the way, that Brady's targeting him as much as he is. It's not a tremendous amount, but it still is a little bit heavier than he normally targets rookies. But guess what, guys? Tyler Johnson's getting it done. I think I may be rolling him out in a lot of my lineups at 4,800 this week. Actually, I know I am. So I am playing Scotty Miller too, but he does have an awkward price. And it kind of makes me question his upside. I mean, he's had 2 weeks that have been worth it so far this season, but he's up there at 8,600. And if he draws Bradbury coverage, which I think is unlikely, by the way, I keep on talking about it, but I do think it's unlikely. It's just possible. It's something as to where I don't know. I don't know if I want to play Scotty Miller with that risk. I mean, it's possible that he sees Bradbury, but even if he doesn't, I mean, it's something as to where they're still playing guys over the top. I mean, the Giants have only allowed, I believe, 7 explosive the 7th most, or maybe it was 10th most explosive plays so far this season. I know they've been losing a lot of games, so they haven't really had to defend against it. But still, it's something as to where like they're not getting beat deep as often. But either way, let's just say that he doesn't. Let's just say that let's go with the trend and say that Mike Evans is covered by Bradbury. That means that Scotty Miller is going to see Ballantyne or Madre. Madre is allowed, and I'm pretty sure I'm saying this right, but Madre is allowed every target his way to be caught so far. Meanwhile, Ballantyne gave up some deep plays to Darnell Mooney. And yeah, it's something as to where he probably would have given up more if Trubisky was actually accurate. So I do like Scotty Miller, not nearly as much as I like these other wide receiver options, but I'm still going to play him. And I do think that he's worth at least one spot in the captain, in where you play like Tom Brady and you play, some of these other guys, especially the running backs, because they could get 2 touchdowns, go up early, and then just run the ball until the game's over. But yeah, I do think that he's worth playing, and I'll say 20 to 30% of your lineups. Meanwhile, you got to play Tom Brady and some of the running backs with him because he's that big play type receiver that you're hoping for. But he's going to have to get 2 touchdowns in order for him to pay off. Now, Gronk is in a similar boat to Miller, but kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum. They are both expensive. They are both going to be chalky. And they both produced 2 weeks out of the year. Now, Gronk has produced the past 2, which has made it more impressive. And even across these past 2 weeks, however, this price that he has on his head at $8K, he's barely beaten that out. I mean, it's something as to where I don't know if Gronk actually has that upside, that 3 touchdown type game, that over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, as to where I want to play him in every lineup. I don't know if he has that upside. The Giants have only allowed 1 tight end so far this year to go over 50 yards. Now, that was this past game, but still, they played some decent tight ends, and they haven't, produced big-time numbers. So Gronk is somebody that I think is safe. I think he's a safe play. I think he's going to get you, probably close to 60 yards and maybe a touchdown, right? Which is a good, solid play. But I don't know if he has the upside. That's why I like Gronk, right? A lot more for cash. Meanwhile, Scotty Miller has the tourneys. So if I'm sitting there and I'm trying to decide between the two, I'm going Scotty Miller in the tournaments and I'm going Gronkowski in cash. He should be a great cash play moving forward this week. Or I should say tonight. Now, I do think that Brate is a good dart throw. Meanwhile, Tanner Hudson is a little bit interesting at 200. So all he needs is a touchdown to pay off. Meanwhile, that allows you to play all these top-end guys. But yeah, it's something as to where if Gronk re-aggravates his shoulder, or maybe Tampa Bay gets up big and wants to rest some of their starters with these nagging injuries, we see Tanner Hudson, we see Cameron Brate actually get some opportunities in the red zone and actually cash in on it. That's a big reason as to why I like Tyler Johnson too. Tyler Johnson might be the only starter in there come the fourth quarter. I like it. And, Tanner Hudson is very similar to me with Justin Watson, but I would probably have less shares of Justin Watson just because I feel like they're phasing Watson out of the offense. I wouldn't be shocked to actually see him as a free agent relatively soon once Antonio Brown takes the field. So, the most complicated aspect of this game, is the running back position on Tampa Bay's side. They've allowed 4 running backs so far this season to have over 40 yards receiving. That's not good. Not good. It would have been 5, but McKinnon actually had 39 yards. They're averaging over 9 yards per reception allowed. The running backs are getting 9 yards per reception. That's absolutely insane. That's the 4th worst so far in the NFL this year. It's bad. Meanwhile, they're allowing the 3rd most yards per game in the air, the 4th most touchdowns per game in the air, and honestly, they're not looking much better on the ground. Now, Arians called Fournette his nickelback, which is Troy's favorite band, by the way. But yeah, Arians called Fournette his nickelback, which is essentially, somebody that's going to be used on passing downs and in kind of hurry up offense type situations. But really, he was on the field more than Ronald Jones was, and they were winning the entire game last week. So that's what makes it difficult for me. I think the Fournette carries the higher ceiling, but I feel like this would be such an Arians thing to go out and pass to Ronald Jones 10 times this game. I just feel like that'd be such an Arians type thing. Now, Jones does have issues with drops, so I don't think that that's going to be the case. But if you're sitting there with like Brady in your captain's spot, right? Would it sit there and be like terrible to play both Fournette and Ronald Jones and like Mike Evans if you can actually make that price work out with like a dart throw included? It's something that could actually make that sexy because I think that both running backs are going to catch passes. Meanwhile, I don't really know which guy I play. I just know that I want to have them both in my lineup. So it's going to make it tough. It's going to make it tough for me to figure out exactly where I'm going to go with this. But with the Giants just, kind of in the middle of the road to the running backs on the ground, meanwhile, terrible in the air, I think I'm going to go about 60% Fournette, and I'll probably have about 30 shares of Ronald Jones. Now, neither Vaughn nor McCoy saw a single snap last week. So there's not much volume like to get cute there. There's not a whole bunch of opportunity. Meanwhile, all these other guys are kind of top heavy, but it's something that's where we talked about Tampa Bay going up. So maybe Vaughn gets some touches, but I'm pretty sure that McCoy has kind of played himself out over there in Tampa Bay. And I don't know if he's going to see too many more snaps. Now, either way, I'm still playing both those guys in at least one lineup, just because I feel like it could be a Bruce Arians type thing where he plays McCoy after getting 0 snaps and he takes a 30-yard pass to the house. Meanwhile, his price is very reasonable. And Vaughn, like we talked about, could get to work at the tail end of the game. And with how cheap he is, can make it worth it. But yeah, it's something as to where this week with these lineups, I'm going to be playing these top heavy type guys and try and pivot down to, the Tyler Johnsons and the Golden Tates. And try and figure out lineups surrounding those guys. Not obviously in the captain spot, but, with those guys included. Anyways, guys, that's going to kill this episode for us. That's going to finish us up for the Monday night show. Make sure you guys go check us out, linktr.ee/fantasy intervention. You can find all of our content there. You can find every source that we're on. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for listening, and thank you for letting me intervene with your fantasy football life. We're out.